This morning we're going to be looking at Psalm 23. And Psalm 23 is perhaps the most beloved and well-known passage in all of Scripture. And the question is why? Why does it so resonate with so many different people? And I believe it's because it strikes an existential chord deep into our souls. It's hard to define, but we all want this sense of well-being. You know, we all just want to be okay. You know, like when you haven't seen someone in a while and you run into them at Walmart or you know, wherever, and you say, hey, you know, how's it going? Are you doing okay? And then they'll say, yeah, I'm doing okay. Or, well, I'm not really doing so well. Haven't you heard about, you know, this or that? Or when you're my age, you start worrying about your children and their choices, and as they're going out in the world, and even, you know, as you talk about it with your spouse or you pray, your thoughts are really kind of more along the lines, you know, I just want them to be okay. Or you think about your bills or your retirement or your health, and you think to yourself, man, you know, I just want to be okay. And this idea of being okay is really huge. It's what we think about. It's what we worry about. It's what we stress about. Again, it's akin to this idea of well-being, maybe contentment, maybe blessing. It's the idea that I'm at peace with myself and with my lot in life. I guess generally speaking, it's this idea that my life is worth living. And we find this theme in so much of great literature and music and cinema and theater. Everything from Hamlet to James Joyce's Ulysses to Slumdog Millionaire. Am I going to be okay? Is my life going to be good? Is my life going to be worth living? Last week I read a John Lennon song, kind of to prove a negative point. I want to read some lyrics to a Beatles song. I don't know what I was listening to when I was writing these things. But this just seemed to be perfect. It's the song Eleanor Rigby. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been, lives in a dream, waits at the window wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? Father Mackenzie writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. No one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved. All this to the constant haunting chorus. Ah, look at all the lonely people. Ah, look at all the lonely people. And we listen to that song and we are moved to a melancholy sadness and pity and fear. And we think to ourselves, God, help me if I ever become like that. Because we have hopes and dreams and aspirations, not to be the president or an astronaut or a rock star or a cowboy. Not those kinds of dreams and aspirations. Something far more base, something more primal, more spiritual than that. Again, the idea of well-being, and it's not necessarily health and wealth and fame and power and worldly success and earthly success, although I know that most of us would take those things. We would, you know, we'd be happy if those came our way. But again, I'm talking about something far deeper and more profound than that. Will I experience love in my life? will I experience true joy, contentment, and peace? Will there be people in my life who genuinely care about me? Will I matter to somebody? Will I feel safe? Will I feel valued? Will I feel significant? Will I feel secure? Will my life have meaning? Will my life be rich? Will I have a richness to it that makes it worth living? And I believe that all of us are cognizant of how life kind of works together as it happens and as it unfolds to answer all of these kinds of questions, especially when it comes to the big decisions in life, which is why we sometimes stress over the big decisions in life, because we know they're going to have impact. Will I go to college? What vocation will I choose? Who will I marry? Will I have children, or will we have children? Will I believe in God? Will I follow God? Will I serve God? Etc., etc., etc. And then there are the seemingly million of other smaller decisions that shape our lives. How will I act? How will I treat people? How will I approach life? Will I be an optimist, or will I be a pessimist? What will I invest in? What will I love? What will I care about? What will I think about? What will I put in my head? What will I allow to influence me? And so many of these things are things that are conscious, and so many of them, frankly, are just kind of subconscious. They almost just kind of happen to us. And speaking of that, there are all of those other things that do seem to happen to us that we seem to have absolutely no control over. Like those things that happen to some people, the breaks that some people get that other people just don't seem to get. Or will my work be valued and appreciated and rewarded? And what will my children be like? I really have almost no control over that. Or will I come into money? Or will some tragedy befall me? Or will I get sick? Or will I live a long and happy life? And it's all of these things that I believe that at least indirectly, if not directly, that we think about, that we worry about. Am I going to be okay? Is my life going to be good? Will my life be worth living? And it's into this place where God speaks Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod and Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The Lord is saying, I know the way. I know the way to well-being, but you need to allow me to take you there. I know how to give you what it is that deep inside your soul that you crave, what you long for, that you need, that you desire. But you have to follow me. I will show you how to live a life worth living. but you have to allow me to be your shepherd. And then the psalmist, or the Lord through the psalmist, begins to break that down. And what that kind of life looks like. And how it is that the Lord in our lives lead us to this place. How He satisfies those things in us. And so we read, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want." Some of us memorize that in the King James. I shall not want. I think for starters, it's really important for us to understand who the shepherd is from the sheep's perspective. Because to the sheep, the shepherd is everything. He's not just the boss. He's not just the master or even the owner, which is probably what the sheep think. Really, to the sheep, the shepherd is really kind of a god. Because the sheep depend upon the shepherd for everything. The shepherd, or the sheep, look to the shepherd to provide food, safety, shelter, security, guidance, protection, help, health, grooming, etc. Everything in their lives. If the shepherd does not guide them to green pastures, the sheep do not eat. If the shepherd doesn't drive away the wolf, then the sheep themselves are eaten. If the shepherd does not groom the sheep, then the sheep are overcome with parasites. And so the sheep, or the shepherd, is everything to the sheep. Now, I'm sure, like every other task in life, there are some people who are good at it, and there are some people who are not so good at it. And so on one end of this perspective, or the continuum, you probably have some shepherds that are maybe not so hot. The Jerry Lewis shepherds. Or for the younger generation who have no idea what I'm talking about, the Will Ferrell shepherds. And their sheep are just kind of scattered around, wandering about, trying to find something to eat in the rocks, and they're half-starved and malnourished because the shepherd's, sitting under the tree eating Pringles and drinking Mellow Yellow. He's too busy to go out and find the green pastures. And then when the wolves come, that shepherd screams like a little girl and runs away, and the sheep scatter, and some of them are actually eaten and devoured. Or his sheep are all matted and scraggly and filled with parasites, and they got flies buzzing all over them because he's too busy updating his Facebook profile on his iPhone. All right, that's the one end of the continuum. On the other end of the continuum, you have shepherds that are more like, since we're going with contemporary personalities here, more like Marie Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond. Like her sheep would be pampered. Oh, here, sheep, are you hungry? I made you some cannolis. Sheep, are you cold? Here, have a blanket. Are those mean wolves picking on you again? I will show them. And she would be an awesome shepherd, and her sheep would absolutely love her, and they would lack for absolutely nothing. And that's the point that the passage is trying to make, and it's important for us to understand this. The text is saying, I shall not want, or I shall not be in want, or I lack for nothing, not because I have a shepherd, but because of who the shepherd is. The psalmist here, David, is bragging on the Lord, on what an incredible shepherd he is, and how awesome it is to be one of his sheep. Like, I just don't have any shepherd. I don't have some run-of-the-mill shepherd. I don't have Jerry Lewis as my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. For example, my daughter Jessie adopted a rescue dog from the animal shelter last year. And the dog was, well, it was obvious the dog had lived kind of a rough life. It was just scared of everything. Probably the most timid dog that I have ever been around, and when we brought it home, it would just sit and kind of cower in the corner and shrink back from everybody or everything. And anytime a new person, or even us for a while, but anytime a person would come by or anything new was introduced into the home, he would just sit there in the corner and shrink back, and this low growl would come out of his chest. And it wasn't an aggressive growl. It was like, please, please, I'm scared. Please leave me alone. Please don't bother me, because I don't know how I'm going to react to this. And the dog was frightened of doorways, would not go through a doorway, interior or exterior. And so for the first few days, we would have to pick the dog up to carry it inside and then carry it outside and then back inside so that it could even go to the bathroom. It was terrified of cars. Wouldn't get in the car. So it was, we tried to put the dog in the car and his legs go out, that whole thing. It, looks like a Laurel and Hardy movie or something like that. Just trying to get the dog in the car. And loud noises, forget about it. Something sudden and loud, he jumps and completely panics and freaks out. In fact, I think, I can't remember exactly who it was. It may have been Leslie. But during one of our small group meetings, there was a loud noise, and the dog jumped and landed on someone's legs and about broke their legs. Because he's not a small dog. He's about a 50-pound dog. And we learned that the dog was found trapped in an enclosed location or an enclosed space and had been for some time, that it was hungry and malnourished. And so this is the dog that Jessie brings home. So she brings him home, names him Henry. I don't know why, but she named him Henry and got him a collar with a little bow tie on it. And Jessie just dotes on that dog. She loves that dog. She cares for that dog. She plays with that dog. She pampers that dog to ridiculous extremes. It is the most entitled, creature I think I've ever been around. It thinks that everybody else is its servant because of how Jessie treats this dog. And the dog now loves us, but it especially loves Jessie. And if dogs could talk, I could just see Henry at the dog park comparing owners with some of the other dogs. And there would be no comparison. Henry would be like, well, my master rescued me from doggy prison. And my master took me home and gave me a wonderful place to live. Oh, and she gives me hugs and kisses every single day, and she frolics with me in the backyard, and she takes me on long walks, and she allows me to sniff the ground wherever I want and for as long as I want. And she gives me the best food, the choicest food, and sometimes she even puts gravy on it or bacon grease and stuff like that. And she lets me sleep in her bed. Guys, I am telling you the truth. I am not exaggerating at all. It's like I'm the master and she's the servant. Really, that's how she treats me. She completely pampers me. Like, guys, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but even when I go to the bathroom, when I poop, she's right there picking it up for me, putting it in a bag, and then carrying it to the garbage. That's how much my master loves me. My old master was terrible. My old master, neglected me and beat me and didn't feed me and would leave me stranded outside for days. My old master was a horrible master. But Jessie is my master now. And it is awesome because she is awesome. That's the line of thought that David is using in this passage. I shall not want. I lack for nothing. Not because I have a shepherd. Oh man, there's all kinds of shepherds out there. There's shepherds everywhere. It's not because I have a shepherd, but because the Lord is my shepherd, and He is absolutely awesome. He is over the top. And so, the question becomes, why is the Lord such a good shepherd? And then the rest of the psalm goes on to talk about this. For example, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Now, before we move on, it's important to note, again, that this psalm was written by David, and that David himself was a shepherd. And that everything that we know about David points to the fact that David was a very good shepherd. In fact, I would bet that David was one of the best shepherds that there was back in that region, in that area. Because he talks about driving off bears and lions with slingshots and stuff like that. And, not just any shepherd is going to be doing stuff like that. And so David knows what a good shepherd is. He understands the shepherding profession. He knows what a good shepherd does, and he knows how to take care of his sheep. And so this is going to lend us tremendous context and insight into the language and the dynamics of this particular psalm. Because what David is saying is that just as I was a shepherd to my sheep, so too is the Lord my shepherd. And just as the Lord cared, or just as I cared for my sheep, so too does the Lord care for me. And He gives me everything that I need. And I think it's also important to point out that David does talk about, as we go through and as we will find out, he's beginning to go through a litany of things that all sheep need, but not necessarily what sheep want. Because sheep really are not too bright. And sheep will wander off in the wrong direction, and they won't go in the direction of the green pastures. Or they'll want to wander in the direction where there might be some predators or something that might harm them. Or they might want to wander off to the side of a mountain where there's some rocks that could slip and where they might fall. But the shepherd knows what's best for the sheep. He knows not only what the sheep need, but what will enable the sheep to thrive and be healthy and be satisfied. And here's the thing about sheep and shepherds. The sheep know this as well. That's why the sheep follow the shepherd. Because they know that when they follow the shepherd, whoa, he's leading us to green pastures. Oh, there's no predators around when the shepherd's here. And so the sheep trust the shepherd. And they follow the shepherd. That's why they respond to his little tapping with the stick and his little nudgings and all of that. So it's important for us to understand that as we begin to break this down and go into this. And so David is talking about what it is to be a good shepherd. Alan Smith writes, "Let me tell you what a good shepherd is like. He loves his sheep. For him, there is no greater reward, no deeper satisfaction than that of seeing his sheep contented, well-fed, safe, and flourishing in his care. That's what his life is all about. He gives everything he has into it. He goes to a great deal of trouble to provide them with the finest grazing, ample winter feed, and clean water. He provides shelter from the storms, protection from enemies, and the diseases and parasites to which sheep are susceptible. From early dawn till late at night, the good shepherd is alert to the welfare of his flock. He gets up early in the morning and goes out first thing to look over his flock. He examines the sheep to see if they are fit and content and able to be on their feet. He can tell if they have been molested during the night, whether they are ill or require some special attention. Throughout the day, he looks over his flock to make sure that everything is all right. Even at night, he sleeps with one eye and both ears open, ready at the least sign of trouble to get up and protect his sheep." Guys, that's the kind of shepherd we have. And we know the identity of this shepherd. Jesus said multiple times in his ministry, "I am the good shepherd," and makes references to his sheep. And he is describing in many ways here this description of what it is to be a good shepherd. He is describing the ministry of Christ. Now, this idea that where it says that of lying down in green pastures, this picture is more than an image of provision and nourishment and abundance. It's also a picture of peace and contentment. You may not know this. I learned this in preparing for this message. But that sheep will not lie down unless 4 conditions are met. Number 1, they must feel safe. Number 2, there must be no tension within the flock or herd. Number 3, they must be free from flies and or parasites. And number 4, they must not be hungry. And I'd like to kind of go through this and break this down because I think this is very interesting stuff. I mean, just in this one sentence, he makes me lie down in green pastures. That doesn't mean anything to us. But to David, the consummate shepherd, he's communicating volumes. And if another shepherd were to read this, he would know exactly what David is talking about. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And so the first one is that the sheep must be free from fear, which means that the shepherd must ensure not only that the sheep are safe, not only that there are no predators or no enemies anywhere in the vicinity, but that the sheep also feel safe and secure. They must accept this reality themselves, which is far easier said than done because sheep spook easily. Sheep frighten easily. In fact, a jackrabbit bolting out of a bush can sometimes cause an entire flock of sheep to stampede. And once just one sheep goes and panics, the rest of the sheep will follow in blind panic mode right behind them without even looking to see what it is that scared the first sheep in the first place. But something very interesting happens when the shepherd is around. The sheep don't do that. His presence has a very calming effect on the sheep. And so they're not so skittish. They're not so easily frightened. They don't spook in the same way. And when the shepherd is standing in the midst of them, instead of running away, they will run closer in to the shepherd. Because they know that when they are near him, that no harm will befall them. Now, what a wonderful picture for us. What a wonderful picture of those who look to the Lord as their shepherd. It is a picture of a people who feel safe and secure because they know the Lord is in their midst and that he is watching over them. And his very presence quiets their souls and gives them a sense of peace and contentment that they have in no other circumstance. And they know that as long as the Lord is present, that their shepherd is present, that no harm may befall them. And so it is then, when the shepherd is present, when there is no fear, that they will lie down. Second condition that must be met for a sheep to lie down is there must be no tension within the flock. Apparently, within most every animal society, there is an established order of dominance or status. In chickens, we know this as the pecking order. I guess in sheep people, they call it the butting order. Because sheep will butt the other sheep with their heads to move them out of a prime grazing spot, or to try and gain or defend a prime grazing spot, maybe to gain or to protect a mate. And so apparently there's this jockeying that goes on within sheep society, and then that is determined by which sheep is stronger by butting the other sheep with their head and moving them out of the place where the aggressor wants them to be. And what happens is when there's this tension within the flock, and I'm sure much of the time, everything's fine. The established order goes, but we know, like in every society or group of animals or beings or what have you, there's always going to be someone who's going to want to upset that, someone who's going to want to challenge that status and try and move up and gain bigger and better for themselves. And when this happens, the sheep kind of freak out. And they go on high alert. And they get real tense and they get real nervous because they don't want anybody taking what's theirs, and they cannot lie down. And so when this kind of tension is going on within the flock, they have to stand up to be ready in case someone comes to butt them and knock them out of their place. They have to defend their territory. And when this happens, the sheep get wore out because they don't sleep. And so they're wore out and they get malnourished and very agitated, and the whole flock becomes unhealthy. Again, very interesting dynamic. Doesn't happen when the shepherd's around. When there's a shepherd in the midst of the sheep, all of this kind of tension is released, and that sort of jockeying doesn't go on. I'm just guessing here, but I'm thinking the sheep know that while the shepherd's around, they don't have to necessarily protect a certain tuft of grass, because the shepherd's going to lead them to where there's plenty of grass for everyone. It seems to be based in an inherent trust in the shepherd. And so, none of that dynamic exists. And so what we see here is a shepherd who watches over his sheep and provides for his sheep to where all of a sudden the pecking order doesn't matter. Keeping up with the Joneses doesn't matter so much. The grass being greener over here on my neighbor's patch doesn't matter. My piece of the pie doesn't matter so much. That I don't have to work and sweat and bleed to try and get what's mine in life and take what's mine as I enter into all this conflict that often happens in human relations and dynamics. I don't have to do all of that because the Lord is my shepherd and He provides all of that for me. So that contentiousness that sometimes happens in life between people where we're all trying to get ours and keep ours and hold on to ours doesn't happen with those who are trusting in the Lord as their shepherd. And it's a matter of faith and a matter of trust. The sheep likewise will not lie down if they are covered in, or if they're having trouble with flies and parasites. Sheep are particularly susceptible to insects, and especially flies, mosquitoes, and gnats. And there's one particularly bothersome fly that's kind of the bane of sheep in the Middle East, and it's called the nose fly. And the nose fly likes to fly around the heads of the sheep and especially the face. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to fly in to the sheep's nose and lay their eggs in the wet membrane on the inner part of the sheep's nose. And if the fly is successful and lays its eggs, then those eggs will hatch into larvae, and the larvae will crawl up the sheep's nose, and they will drive that sheep absolutely crazy. And the sheep will be so irritated that it will not be able to lie down because this thing is just completely bugging it, completely nagging at this sheep that is burrowed into its head, basically. And so at the beginning of fly season, back in the day, the shepherds would make up this oil concoction and they would apply it to the heads of the sheep. And that oil, for whatever reason, would keep the flies from doing this and keep the flies away. It also cures a very contagious disease that was a problem back then among sheep called scab. It kind of gives you some insight maybe into what's coming later in the psalm when he says, you anoint my head with oil. And so we have the shepherd caring for his sheep, providing for his sheep, protecting his sheep, ensuring that his sheep are healthy. And so we see that we have a shepherd who ensures that his sheep are not just safe and well-fed and content, but that they are also healthy. And I believe it's a picture of how the Good Shepherd works in our lives to keep those nagging parasites from burrowing into our hearts. Fear and doubt and brokenness and bitterness and resentment and all that. He protects us from all that which leads to spiritual brokenness and sickness. He's looking out for us as he leads us towards his kingdom. And then finally, the sheep will not lie down if they are hungry. Again, sheep are kind of nervous, fidgety creatures. Easily frightened. They're, again, just always seem to be worrying, I guess. And at night, if they don't have enough to eat and they're still hungry, even after darkness falls, they will not go to sleep. They will continue to wander around, even though they cannot see, they cannot necessarily even find grass, but they will just wander around looking for something to eat and grass to eat until they're satisfied enough then to lie down. Until that gnawing hunger is satisfied. And so what a good shepherd does is he ensures that his sheep are satisfied before nightfall so they will lie down and go to sleep. Now, again, this is easier said than done. Because the topography where David was a shepherd in Palestine and in the Middle East is a dry, brown, sun-scorched kind of place. And those green pastures are not just everywhere. And chances are, if you find one, there's somebody else who's already staked that out, and their flock is over there. And so it was a lot of work for shepherds, especially younger shepherds like David, to find that green pasture. And they would sometimes have to take the sheep, days in one direction or another to get to the exact spot where those sheep were going to be well-fed and nourished and satisfied. In fact, sometimes they couldn't even find a place like that as much as they searched, and so they would actually create them by diverting streams and whatnot and trying to water areas so that grass would grow up so that they could create that secret place where only they knew about so they could feed their sheep. And so the picture here is of a shepherd who's going to great lengths to seek out those areas of nourishment and provision for his sheep, that cares about the sheep, that they are healthy, and that they are well fed. And so it is then and only then, when the sheep are safe and satisfied and healthy and content, that the sheep will lie down. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. What a rich picture this is. The Lord is our shepherd. And we shall not be in want, we shall not be in need. Because we don't have just any shepherd. We have the good shepherd. We have the shepherd that cares enough to even lay down his life for his sheep. We have a shepherd who cares about us and cares about our souls and desires that we have every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. And even as this is really kind of the introduction to the Lord's, to this psalm, the 23rd Psalm. As you can see, this is about as far as I can go today. In the next couple of weeks, we'll just break it down line by line and just kind of dive in and dig in and break down what all of these different images are talking about and what they portray from David's perspective, but we can see where it's going. He makes us lie down in green pastures because we are His sheep. And He wants to ensure that we feel safe and secure. He wants to ensure that we're in right relationship with others, that we're not in tension and conflict and brokenness with other people. He wants to ensure that we are free from those enemies and those parasites that will devour our souls. He wants to ensure that we are well nourished and satisfied, and that we have everything that we need, that our souls need, so that we can truly rest in Him. What a picture that is. Think about that. We are, you and I, we are part of His flock. We are His sheep. And there's this image of the sheep lying down, free from trouble, healthy, content, and well-fed in the presence of our shepherd, who loves us and cares for us and knows exactly the right way and works hard to do this, to take us to that place where we are satisfied in Him. What an incredible God we serve. And what a shepherd He is for us. He truly is the good shepherd.